Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where last episode we managed to finish up landing on 2 of Atraitus' moons, which means that there is 1 landing plus a quote-unquote impact into Atraitus remaining. The main issue at this point, of course, remains the battery power and the power generation in general. Now there's a couple of things that we can do about that. We have a bunch of tech points at this point, which means that we could work on things like, not that. Where is it? Large infrastructure? That's docking port size. Okay. There's definitely stuff in here that we can do. Where is it? Burn ties? Yeah, this would be the one. So we'd be able to get ourselves very fancy solar panels, and I don't know if this will be effective enough. We can grab burn ties, and then that would allow us to take either faint sun or plutonium galore. RTGs are very expensive. I would like to avoid that. We will take faint sun for right now. So we'll just do that, and we'll see how that goes. Of course, then we've got some of these other techs that we can grab. We can grab one of them. So what are we interested in? I mean, lights, perhaps? I mean, we've already got lights, but we could grab stadium lights. So that's fine for now. We're getting very close to having all of these grabbed, but we've got a little ways to go. So what that's going to allow us to do is that's going to allow us to get much fancier solar panels. This will likely cost a lot of money, is the primary issue. But we could bring these guys up to ridiculous size. That is definitely ridiculous. And we can increase the array length, and we can increase the number of rows, and we can increase the row size. That's all fine. Square and hexagonal. We could have it be default instead of square and simple. Simple is a lot. Oh, there's also advanced here. Advanced is really expensive. Okay, well, we don't actually need them to be anywhere near this big, right? So 100% is probably enough. My main question is, if the environment is Atraitus, right? Peak power is 2.57 kilowatts. Okay. Whereas this was 59 watts over Atraitus. So that is a significant differentiation. No doubt about that. This is a lot more theoretical power generation. So at 2.57 kilowatts, if we detach this and we look at each of these produces, or rather consumes, 245 kilowatts. So that means that these are still just a drop in the bucket, right? And they're very expensive at that. This would be very viable if we were doing this, say, quite a bit more into the system. Over Sergia, this would generate 206 kilowatts. That's much better. Over Volco, 641 kilowatts. Although we'd have heat issues, probably. So that's definitely something to think about. But I think we're better off, at the moment, just getting rid of those, not carrying that weight, bringing these along as they are, and looking at the mass here. So the mass of this part is currently what? 8 tons. Okay, so let me pull up a calculator here. So calculator has each one of these as being 300 kilograms. Okay. Well, actually, we could do it this way. So the overall craft mass at this point is 18.5 tons. If we ditch this entire stage, then this is now a mass of 5.99 tons. So that means that this overall mass is, well, 18.5 minus 5.99, giving us 12.51 tons here. So if we were to ditch that, that will be a substantial cost savings. That also means that we can extend this somewhat by distance, right? So at this moment, the current mass here is 8.85 tons. If we wanted to extend this by 12.51 tons, this would probably be too much, right? So 12.51 is the current and 8.85. So if we wanted to extend this guy up to be like 8.5 meters in length or so, something about like that, that means that this part is currently at 14.8 tons. So let me open up a new calculator here. So that was 8.85 previously. So 12.51 minus 8.85. That's 3.66 tons. Actually, yeah, that's 3.66 tons out of our 12.51 tons. Do we have too much height at this point? Let's check in on that. Yes, by 1 meter. So that means that we need to drop this down by 1 meter in total. So we're at 14.8 tons, and if we drop this down to 8... Hang on, this was at... Where was this height? There's a lot of numbers here. 8.5. So we need this to go to 7.5. Maybe slightly below. Okay. And this is currently at 13 tons at this moment. Okay. What was it before? I've forgotten. Amazing. Well, here's the idea. I'm just going to pop this off, and we're going to bring this up to here, and we'll check our thrust to weights. We'll do it this way. The math is too complicated without me writing stuff down. I can't remember it all, apparently. Okay, so Drew here, 1.65 to start with. That's not bad, actually. So that'll be a lot more that we can go in terms of this fuel. The real question is going to be, are we going to achieve orbit, and how are we going to do on getting out to Atraitus? But this should be a better solution because of the power issue. If we didn't have the power issue, this would not be a necessity, right? We could also increase the number of these drop tanks from 4 to 6. I think we'd have severe issues getting into orbit if we did that. But you can see here, this is broadly similar to the same amount of cost that we would have had with the Xenon engines. Our starting thrust to weight is 1.5, so that's definitely noted. Let's double check our staging here. I want to see how this goes on making it into space. I'm very, very concerned that it's not going to make it into orbit, just due to the sheer amount of mass that was slapped into this upper stage. But let's see how that goes. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not going to go well. But this would solve the power issue once and for all. Okay, so let's put ourselves, and in fact, we have too much ambient at this point. Let's turn down our ambient lighting back down to the normal 100. There we go. We'll apply that, and then we want to move this on the easterly side over to 70. We'll max the throttle, and we will stage, and off we go. Pretty decent thrust to weight out of the water. But let's see how far this carries us. I'm noticing our batteries draining very quickly. Are these electrically fed? Okay. So that is, of course, very problematic that these engines are electrically fed. We're, of course, going back down at this point. So we need to solve that problem. That was reliant on having battery power up top. We could swap these tanks over to being battery instead of Carolox. That's an option. Or we could keep them at Carolox and switch the cycle of these from being electrically power cycled to being like gas generator. That's going to increase their size a fair amount, but it's also going to increase their thrust by a ridiculous amount. So that means that we don't need their size to be anywhere near this big. It would need to be more like here. That also increases the price quite a lot. Even that is a little bit too much. We could drop the chamber pressure. And we'd want that to be, honestly, chamber pressure at minimum is reasonably fine. So that drops that price down. These are now gas-fed. And we could increase the size up ever so slightly. I wonder if this is too tall? It is. So we're going to have to increase, or rather decrease this back down to 150. Is that still too tall? No, that is not. Okay, so these are now gas generator engines. It's a slight reduction in cost, and it's a very similar thrust to weight. Let's see what that feels like. Okay, so once again, out to the east side at 70 degrees, we're going to throttle this on up and stage, and off we go. This does mean, because we're using a gas generator, that we're pre-burning a little bit of this fuel. So our efficiency on that fuel usage is going to be slightly lower. The other option is we could have used like strap-on batteries that would detach partway up, which is an interesting option, theoretically. No doubt about that. But let's just see how far this propels us. So we're currently at an apoapsis of about 8 kilometers, and we're going to want to go up pretty high, I think, because of our potential significant thrust-to-weight issue on orbital achievement. I think that's going to be the main problem here. So I'm going to hold at this attitude until an apoapsis of 30 kilometers. Then I'm going to drop us to 45, and I'm kind of just going to stay there. So we'll put this at 45. And we're just going to stay right at about 45 degrees for a long time here. Okay, we'll ditch those tanks. Off they go. And at this point, our current thrust to weight is just barely over 1. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a pretty major thrust to weight issue. We're going to need a lot more altitude and or burn time. So that's absolutely understood. Our thrust to weight is not phenomenal. And this was exactly the issue that I had outlined with going to this Methylox solution, right? This was what I thought was going to happen. So we're currently not quite having an apoapsis in space. Our thrust to weight is on the low side, and this is definitely spooky. So I don't think we're going to achieve orbit here. We're going to have to make some alterations. Now, we could increase our number of Methylox engines. We could put Methylox engines in each of these locations. That would cause us some clipping issues, no doubt about that. But you can see here, our thrust to weight is only 0.25. So we obviously need to propel quite a lot further on this bottom stage. Now, there are a couple of options that we could go for here. We could onion stage this out further. We could go down on our amount of Methylox. That's the smart solution. Or we could just duplicate this, attach it here, and then duplicate this entire stack. This is the dumb solution, but it's also the very, Kerbal solution. So we would do something like this, and then we would duplicate these engines. They'd go here. We wouldn't want these to increase their radius like that. We'd want this to be pretty much right about there. And we'd need to increase the altitude of the mounting point here. So that would need to come up like so, not quite that high, to there. So you can see that basically doubles our cost of this, but that will also push us a lot further because specifically we're going to be running these tanks, well, simultaneously. I'm wondering though, this is claiming a starting thrust to weight of 1.08. I'm wondering if we actually need the engines. It would be interesting, for sure. So we've got the fuel transfer mode happening here. That seems reasonable. This whole thing is pretty unreasonable at this point, but let's put this out on the pad and see what it does. I say pad. There is no pad. We're in the middle of the ocean for cost savings reasons. Okay, I want to be at a heading of 90 degrees. Thank you very much. And we're going to put this over to a pitch of 70. We're going to throttle up, and we're going to fire this. I'm not happy with this bottom stage at this time. Okay, I'm not sure where those engines are in the staging. Hang on. We got to pull this back. It did not put those in the bottom stage. So where is the staging here? So that's the outer stages there. All of these inner stages are put together. Oh, that's really awkward. Why would it do this? Okay, we're going to have all of these mage engines be here for initial takeoff. That puts us at a much better thrust to weight. And then these side interstages, they need to be split off, right? So we're going to need a new stage down here. We're going to need these internal side interstages to be up in here. Okay, and then we've got the external side interstages out here that go first. The rest of this looks pretty okay. Yeah, so that should be fine. I'm going to save this, although I'm not very happy with this launcher. We could just make this be solid rocket motors. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I'm okay with this price, to be honest. We don't have that much more to do. The launch fee is a little up there, but it's just water, so it's not that bad. Okay, let's bring this on over to 70 degrees. Throttle up. We'll fire, and let's get this thing going. So we should be seeing the fuel draining out here before it drains in here, which it appears to be draining at a slightly faster rate than we can bring that in. That's understood. Okay, so we're going to hold here for the time being. Our thrust to weight is higher, and we're going to get a longer burn time on that. It's not quite a maximum ideal scenario because we're not able to transfer the fuel over here as quickly as I'd like, but it'll do for now. So this is the more Kerbal solution, for sure. It's not the best solution, but it's a solution. No doubt about that. So we're going to ditch this outer shell very shortly. We're at about 10% fuel left on it. And out it goes. So now I'm going to bring us over to 45, and this shell here is much more fueled than it was when we were at this point previously. It's not fully fueled, but it's more fueled. So this is going to carry us further, no doubt about that. And we're now at an apoapsis of about 50 kilometers. Again, I'm just going to hold here at 45 degrees for a good long time. We're fine with targeting a very high orbit for this. That's completely and totally okay. So we're at about 20% fuel remaining in these side boosters, the second shell of side boosters. We'll be staging those momentarily. 10% left. 3, 2, 1, and there we go. Off they go. And now we're just over 1 thrust to weight as we start burning this. So this is a pretty good apoapsis. That's definitely a lot higher than it was before. I'm going to drop us down to a pitch of 15 degrees for right now as we burn through this. I'm not taking this to a pitch of 0, but 15. I want to be working primarily on that lateral velocity, but we don't have that much DV in this stage. So that's understood. We maybe even wanted to continue to push up that apoapsis, but I'm a little bit concerned about time to apoapsis even at this altitude of apoapsis. So time to apoapsis is increasing with this thrust to weight. But what about this thrust to weight? Yeah, that's going to be concerning. So we're on 2x speed here. Time to apoapsis is decreasing, which is not very surprising. If we go into orbital velocity, we see that our orbital velocity is also decreasing at this time. So let's put ourselves back up into the pitch of 45. We may have to stick on the 45-degree pitch for much longer to get ourselves a significantly higher apoapsis. That's not ideal, for sure. But, I mean, we have a lot of fuel in these side tanks. If we can get this into orbit, it can go a very long ways. a very, very long ways. So I'm looking at the time to apoapsis here, and I'm thinking, man, that's going down fast. Our orbital velocity is increasing, but not by much, and we need to get our solar panels deployed. That's for sure, because this is electrically fed. We need to get the batteries recharged. Or at least slow that down. So the electrical feeding is absolutely a problem here. We are generating some power, but I want to rotate us a little bit so that our second solar panel is a little bit more active here. Okay, what's the power consumption of this guy? Power consumption is 207 kilowatts. Okay, so obviously this is going to be a significant issue for us. We're now at a very, very low amount of thrust here because we're only generating so much power. So again, we need to have more time here, and I need to open those solar panels much earlier. So let's retry this. I want to try a different ascent profile without changing the design of the rocket. So what we're going to do is we're still going to put this at 70. We're going to throttle up and fire all of these rockets immediately. And off we go. We're going to hold here at 70 until these detach, at which point we're going to drop to 45, and we're going to stay at 45 for basically ever. I just want to see if that's even viable. So let's take this up to 2x speed, and we'll keep an eye on this. There we go. As soon as these are burned out, we're going to ditch them, and we're going to drop to 45 degrees. Okay, they're gone. So over we go to 45 degrees, and we're going to hold here for a very long time. So these tanks are going to drain out, and we're building up quite a lot of orbital velocity at this point. So they've got about 30% left there. 20. 10. And they're dry. Okay, now we're just going to hold here, and we're going to continue burning like this. We're just looking to push that apoapsis way up. For now, a target of maybe about 250 before we start going horizontal, perhaps. That might feel okay. Maybe even like 300, actually, now that I think about it. Okay, so there we go, and we need to extend our solar panels right now. I'm going to angle us to better catch the sun once it's available. There we go. We will have solar panel charge fairly soon, and that'll delay the amount of time we have, or rather, that'll increase the amount of time we have before that charge runs out, right? That's the idea, anyway. So our apoapsis is currently 223 kilometers. You can see time to apoapsis is decreasing. So that's understood. I just don't think we have enough power in this stage. I think that's what it comes down to in the end. So, I mean, these are recharging at a reasonable rate, but the usage here, very significant. 207 kilowatts versus producing 1.3 and 1.0, right? So that's going to be a core issue, is lack of battery power for the Methalox engine. So that's understood. I think we're going to have to expand our amount of battery. The question is, where would we want to do that? I guess in the center core, most likely. But you can see here, time to apoapsis still going down for the moment. We're able to continue this burn for now, and we're still at 250 kilometers. We just achieved 250 on our apoapsis. But we don't have anywhere near the amount of orbital velocity we need at this time, and we're running out of battery charge right now. It's not going to take us a lot of battery charge to get ourselves to where we want to be, though, in terms of how much battery burn time we need. So let's pull this back, and let's put in some amount of battery charge in this upper tank here. So I'm going to drop this from being at 7.5 meters down to 7 meters. I guess 6.99. And then I'm going to put in a battery tank here. So we're going to put in a fuel tank, but we'll change that to a battery. And this should end up being... How tall was that supposed to be? Like... I forgot how much I moved this by. This was originally 7.5 meters. What is the length of this guy now? Okay, let's, no, not that. Undo it. Let's do that. Okay. This is, okay, so I did it by half a meter. Got it. Okay, so that is now going to not be auto-selected, and I want that to be battery. So that's going to hold 721 kilowatts compared to the 11.8 kilowatt hours. So this is going to be 721 kilowatt hours. So that's going to be a lot more battery burn time, and that should be enough. That's going to drop our amount of methalox by a little bit, but I want to give this a quick test here, and let's see if this can make it into orbit. I'd be a little surprised. It is past time to put a cut in here, so I want to get this done nice and quick. Okay, so off we go. We're going to hold at 70 degrees for the moment. We definitely get a reasonably high apoapsis out of it, but I kind of want it to be higher. So I'm going to hold at 70 a little longer. Okay, so we're going to ditch these guys. There we go. And I'm going to wait until this is at 50 now. Okay, now we're going to go to 45. That's going to give us a fair amount of additional altitude at the cost of less horizontal speed, which is not ideal, to be honest. So we're going to do something like that. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ditch those side tanks. And now we're just on this center core, and we're going to push up this apoapsis as much as we can. Let's go into orbital mode here. We can see our orbital velocity slowly increasing here. And we are high enough to extend our solar panels, which we should do, but we're going to have less of an issue on our solar panels. So that seems to be reasonably fine. We're not going to have that much of an issue there. So we now need to be firing up our electric engine, but we're going to be draining the battery much, much slower in terms of a percentage. You can see the overall amount of battery power we have here is now 732 kilowatt hours. We're going to have much, much better battery life for these long electrically fed burns. So that's going to be a good thing. The real question is, can we even get this into orbit? So we're working on pushing up this apoapsis, and in the meantime, we're getting that lateral velocity increasing. It's not fantastic, but we definitely need to get that time to apoapsis coming up, or at least we need to get our orbital velocity looking good enough. If this doesn't work, then we pretty much need to soup up our bottom stage a little bit more. We need to milk a little more out of it. And I'd like to do that without increasing the number of layers again, because that's going to have diminishing returns. So that apoapsis is creeping upward. Our orbital velocity is holding at this moment. It's now beginning to increase. But time to apoapsis is heading downward, and that is definitely spooky. But our battery is in a much, much better state now. You can see we've barely burned off any of it. We probably have too much battery at this moment. We could probably dial that back. But the core issue at this point is simply we need to be moving faster at this point, right? No doubt about that. So our apoapsis is 255 kilometers, and we're not going to make it into orbit here. We're carrying too much weight. We could absolutely cut the mass of these tanks. That is absolutely something that we could do. No doubt about that. I'd rather not, but we could. It's a theoretical possibility. But I think there's probably some gains to be had in that first stage, and it'll be interesting trying to figure out where exactly those are. No doubt about that. But we're at the apoapsis now, and we're nowhere near orbital velocity, so we are heading down. Obviously, this does not achieve orbit. I'm not surprised. That's about what I expected. But it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to see what we can do to soup up this first stage a little bit. There's definitely some options that can be had. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Andy McGar, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.